without further ado, let's see Satish. Now Satish has played a major role in India as an evangelist for various languages. He's always been he always likes, who saw him today? Who saw him today? Right? Very few people, because as Satish, he's always in he doesn't like to come into the limelight. So we said, you know what, Satish, you should. What do you think of that? See, he's a very modest guy. But what we're going to do is try to extract as much information as we can from his past experience, talk about his life, get other people on stage. We'd love to have questions on board. If you are interested in answering, commenting, grab a seat here. All right, Satish, have a seat. Let's get started. We'll sit at two corners of this. Can somebody turn on the mic? Mic test, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. So, Satish, how many years of experience do you have?
37.
How many people in the audience are older than 37 here? So, he was a professional before most of us were born. So, what we have decided to do is go back 4 decades and try and find out how much knowledge, Satish, can we actually get back from you. You were in the age of punch cards, I believe?
Sorry?
You were in the age of punch cards?
Yeah. Before that.
And how would you actually use a punch card? Anybody here knows how a punch card is actually used, or what a punch card is? A handful of people. So how long would it take for you to write a program then?
Well, morning we used to write the program and wait till the evening till, whatever mistakes were there were pointed out in the evening. So it used to take 3, 4, maybe 5 days for one simple program like Hello World to run.
Now you know where the programming coffee culture actually came in from. You write a program, wait for it to finish for a long time.
Punch cards at that point in time were expensive and we were students there. So, during our spare time, we used to fix holes, stick the holes in the punch card and try and see whether it reruns again. Long process.
Interesting. So, just for the sake of clarity, when did you start your professional career?
78.
78. 78. And which was a popular language of the 80s, which you were familiar with?
I started off with Fortran.
How many Fortran programmers here? Oh, we have a Fortran programmer. Pretty cool.
Great.
And as part of the 80s, which was the language which actually dominated?
Most of the time we were using C, COBOL.
I'm pretty sure there are still some COBOL programmers here. That language has never bloody left us.
It's still there, yeah.
Still there. And there's an interesting story that we used to share, when you used to tell us about when we were busy. So, just to give you a brief background about this, I'm not sure if I ever ended up introducing myself throughout the day. I'm Gautam Rege, and I'm the co-founder of Josh Software. And Satish is one of the directors at Josh. It is also interesting how we became the director at Josh, but we'll get to that later. I'd love to hear the inspiring story you had to talk about some chap, I forget his name, Narayan Murthy?
Narayan Murthy, yeah. Okay. Actually, I knew Sudha Murthy, his wife, because she was working at Valchandnagar Industries, where I was also involved. And Narayan Murthy, before Infosys, had a small office at Deccan Gymkhana, just next to Valchandnagar Industries. It was Data General's office. Just two guys, Narayan Murthy and a colleague of mine who were working together. At that point of time, they were doing something in Pascal. And I got to know Sudha Murthy and then, of course, Narayan Murthy. And then later on, when I started my own company, he had just started Infosys, and I was lucky enough to go to the opening, which was a small flat which they used to stay at Model Colony. So that's how I got to know. But
He was there at the opening of the Infosys office.
uh,
But that's not all. That's
yeah.
not all. The interesting part is still to come.
Yeah, interesting part was when I started my own company, and I used to move around at various clients. So at that point of time, I was in Bombay with some client, and my colleague, who was also my partner there, was in the Pune office, and Mr. Narayan Murthy had come to our office because he had started Infosys and he had some projects which he wanted us to build. Uh, Unluckily, my partner, I won't name him, but somehow he didn't believe what Mr. Narayan Murthy was saying, and he didn't bother even telling me later on that he had come. 2, 3 years. Sorry. Hello? Hello? Yeah. 2, 3 years down the line, the project actually, then he told me, "Man." Yeah. That's okay. Yeah, so 2, 3 years down the line, when my colleague told me that Mr. Narayan Murthy had come to office and he was offering this project, I said, "On what basis did you really, refuse him?" So he said, looking at him, I thought he was.
Well, looks are deceiving, but what would have actually been the case? Had it been some other way? I don't know. It would have probably changed a lot. Well, Satish, what was the 90s like? Which, I mean, of course, we are now familiar that 90s was when Java came in. And what were you doing for that decade?
There was Visual Basic, Basic of course first, sorry, Basic, Visual Basic. Then of course 95, I got into Java.
And you used to do a lot of training.
No, before that I used to work for Sun. So I did a lot of patches at Java, though it was not open source.
And you made a killing in the Y2K boom.
Yeah, 98, 99 was the boom period for Java. So I remember I used to do a lot of training. So, the entire day, my sort of classroom was full with people just wanting to know Java. Because if you know Java at that point of time, you could easily get to the States. So I used to have engineers with 7, 8 years experience in chemical industry who wanted to learn Java just because they want to go to the States. And most of them did go, of course, before the crash.
So now the interesting question, what got you to Ruby?
Okay.
You were searching for a new language, you were looking for a change.
Normally this is my gut feeling is every 10 years.
Is he audible in the end?
Okay.
Just keep going.
Normally it's my gut feeling that every 10 years, I mean, every language has its own product life cycle. Java is already dead from that perspective. Then I was thinking of looking into something else. Okay, it's okay. And that's when I came across Ruby. That was about, I think, 2003. And I started work. I was looking around for people who are already working. I couldn't find except for one. I think one person's already here from that company. So I started this Pune Ruby group at that point of time to actually interact with more people. And subsequently, I met the Josh guys.
So you forgot, I think, Ruby Learning. He was giving me an interesting statistic about Ruby Learning.
Yeah, Ruby Learning is a site which I've been running for many years. Basically, rubylearning.com is where everything is there online. You can go and read it up. Rubylearning.org is where I teach online Ruby. And today, the Ruby Learning site per se is about 120K US dollars. That's what it's.
Hang on. Are you saying that the domain itself is valued at 120,000 US dollars?
Yeah, the domain.
And you don't intend to sell it, retire, and go to the Bahamas?
No.
No. Okay. Interesting. Right. That's called a Ruby evangelist there for you. Now, talking about open source, you've seen life before there was open source. What are your thoughts about what the change, the revolution that was brought about because of open source being so prevalent?
One thing which I used to notice initially is, especially in India, being a service industry, everyone, most of the developers never used to look beyond what they've been doing. And it was very difficult for people to, for me to convince, okay, there's much more than what you're doing at work, which was at that point of time either COBOL or Java. And not being open source was a problem because they didn't have an opportunity to contribute. But once open source movement is there, a lot of people, apart from work, can contribute, and that's a big thing.
So speaking about open source, I mean, is there anybody here who has not worked in the open source industry? It's impossible to even ask that question. This sounds absurd. So we decided, we have Nick, who's been working, come on over, who's been working in the open source community for a huge number of years. And I said, you know what, it might be a good addition to the panel where we can actually talk about Ruby as an open source language, the difference it has made in people's life. Have a seat. So, welcome, Nick. You got to share the mic, sharing is caring.
Hello.
So, Nick, what got you into Ruby?
What brought me to Ruby?
Yes.
My friend Tobias.
Short and sweet answers always work, right? All right.
Hey man, it's all in my book. On the first page, I talk about that I was a Perl and PHP developer with a strict object-oriented attitude. And then my friend showed me Ruby on Rails, and that's how I got to Ruby.
So in the 12 plus years?
That was...
Oh, we'll keep it at 12 plus years.
yeah, 12 plus.
Well, it
I'm
gives out
older
your
than
age.
12 years, yeah.
So in the 12 plus years, you've worked on Cells, Reform, you got Trailblazer going. So what's a typical day in your life like?
You're embarrassing me again on stage.
Like I always do.
My typical day is, I don't know, I got asked a couple of times today, so my typical day is I get up really early, like 6:30, 7. Is that early? Like I've heard, like in India you start working at 10:30, right? Like
Who
starts?
Let's take a poll here. Let's involve the audience. What is anybody here actually has fixed office hours? Don't be shy.
One person.
No, I'm sure the hands will raise. Fixed office hours, where you go and swipe in and swipe out. How many people swipe in, swipe out? There you go. Alrighty. Do you get a salary cut if you don't make it on time? Alrighty. You got to switch. Well, yeah, the typical, most people here, correct me if I'm wrong, do not actually have fixed working hours, as long as you put in 12 hours a day.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if it's fixed or not. So what I do is I start, let me quote my favorite politician, Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, yes.
Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy and wealthy and wise.
I don't know what I can vouch for the healthy and the wise part. Wealthy? Well, so talking about wealth, how does working in open source make you money?
That's a terrible topic because I've been working for 10 years in the open source community. And basically I've earned, I think I have a donate button somewhere, this old round thing, and I think it has $80. But I'm not even sure where this money is. Like it's just like, the button says $80 raised.
Well, so you're saying that in a solid 12 hours you've earned $80.
80 US dollars, okay?
So how does one make money in open source?
Tell me, I want to know.
Satish, thoughts on that? All right, so here is
We're
what we
clueless.
call here is what we call shooting yourself in the foot. We are here sitting about the open source revolution, and we say, hey, who makes money here?
Like, it's always like, people, there's like outstanding personalities like Aaron Patterson who works for Red Hat or Microsoft or whatever, and he gets paid like, I don't know, double salary for working on open source, or DHH has his own company and all that stuff. And then there's like the small people, yeah? People like me that spend 6 hours of their 8 hours working day on open source, and they always have to hide that from their bosses, otherwise they get fired. Then I have to find a new job, which is pretty awkward.
So then, well, now you're shooting yourself in the foot. How are you going to, what advice are you going to give to people? Don't work in open source, just work for money?
Yeah, only for the money and the fame.
Well, that was intentional. Well, let's get the real answer.
No,
now.
of course. I mean, in case you didn't pay attention to my talk because it was boring, it was pretty early, I know. Of course, you should work on open source, and of course, you shouldn't work for you shouldn't work on open source for money, because it's going to take years until it pays off. I mean, now I slowly start to get some revenue from the book, which is kind of cheap and affordable. HTTP : //
No sales promotions here. But you can tweet about it.
Twitter, yeah. What did I say? Yeah, so open source is not to make money. It'll make your reputation better. You'll get easier into interviews and jobs. You have a different standing. That's what I said when I was talking about confidence. Like I can basically walk into an interview and do clear where the journey is going and stuff.
So as long as you're
So
reputable.
basically, the bottom line is, if you do open source, you don't do resumes. That's awesome.
All right. So if you really want to be cool, ensure you don't send your resume to anybody. Send your link of your GitHub handle, and if you are in a position to actually have that dashboard which shows all the green boxes, it doesn't necessarily mean people give you a job, but at least you can walk in anywhere and tell people, you know what? I'm the dude. I'm the dude who can walk in sleeveless t-shirts and
Hang on, what was that?
sleeveless t-shirts. All right. Wait, we have a question.
Okay, that's how the panel works. People just come here and sit down, and we ask them, or they ask us.
Hello. So this question is specially for Satish sir. We heard about you have a vast 4 decades of experience. You have seen so many ups and downs in IT. What I've noted recently is, so there was a period, probably early 2000s or somewhere in 90s. Asians were termed to be the best programmers in the world. They are yet, but we have seen, Western communities, they have started building that capabilities, and no doubt, they are doing quite good. So even their young generation, they have started learning. You look at their curriculum, it's quite interesting. Quite bottom to the ground, and they are doing really very nice. So any tips probably for the young crowd, how we can cope up going ahead?
See, the first thing which I feel is, we've had this advantage because English, most of us can speak, right? That's been one major advantage as compared to many other countries, which they are picking up. And my gut feeling is India is not going to be a very, a country where, you're going to get jobs from abroad. It's moving towards Southeast Asia and other. I've been there, and I see even small villages. They have lots of companies there who are working in software, and I think the trend is more going towards that side. So it's a big risk factor for us because most of us are very complacent. Okay, I'm working here, I'm getting this job, and this so much salary. I don't think it's going to last for very long.
So you also believe that you have to keep upgrading your skills.
You have to. If you don't, it's a Deccan Ruby.
Yeah, you can definitely say something in Marathi. Nick is sure to translate it for us in English. All right. So thank you for your question. And there are 3 still vacant seats here, so please feel free to come and sit here. I'll ensure that I see you and I'll get a question in. Talking about upgrading your skills, how important do you guys think it is in starting up in life, starting your own business?
See, I like coding myself, and like probably now, I've probably worked with 8, 10 different languages, right from assembly onwards. And you need to keep upgrading yourself. If you don't, you're gone. I've seen colleagues of mine, when during COBOL, they never thought of upgrading. They said, why should we learn something new when we are getting good money? And I also have seen many years down the line, they left their jobs and not doing anything, or getting into some other area.
So you've been through, how many times have you started up in these last 37 years?
I started on my own since '85. I've not worked for any company.
All right. So over 85, you had a lot of your own startups and you've been associated with various companies.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I did a lot of BOT work, build, operate, transfer. So
Okay.
I set up about 3 or 4 companies in Pune for American, subsidiaries here, which I used to run and then transferred.
Nice. So to add a different color to our conversation, we have somebody with almost 4 decades of experience doing different things. We have heavy-duty open source committers. Why not talk to a few entrepreneurs in the crowd? So for those who I was roaming around in the crowd. I may have caught some of y'all. I may have not met some of y'all. But let me do a quick poll. How many of y'all are actually working in startups? And now, next quick question. What is a startup? How many of y'all don't get regular salaries? That's a startup for you. All right, man, I'll help you out later. Don't worry. So let's see if we can call up. I'm going to call a few people here to talk to us for some time as guests. And I'd be more than happy. I could not have spoken to a lot of people here. So if you have some information, please come. You could grab the seats and contribute, clarify, ask questions, or even have your own comments. So Sidhu, are you there in the crowd? Come on over, man. So Sidhu is the CEO of C42. And I was trying to generate some theme. And he is one of the people who started up young. Started up young. All right. Applause, please. Oh yeah, you can always sit next to me. Oh, I'm sorry, Nick. But so Sidhu, how and when did you start up? Give us a little background.
My first startup was when I was 21, going 22, a year into my first job.
Taking a poll, it's not my opinion. See, how many of y'all think he was too young to start up? This is the time you raise your hand. All right, so what do you think of, oh, there you go. So tell us more about it. You thought you were too young. If you had the chance, you would have started up again that early.
So this is a difficult thing for me to express without sort of going off the path, right? I do think I wasn't mature enough at the time. But maturity is something that people usually correlate to age. They like you're not old enough, but that's not it. I think maybe I would define it as I did not have a very clear understanding of why I was doing what I was doing. And consequently, on that occasion and another occasion about 5 or 6 years later in another startup, we saw very, very strong growth and traction. Like now in hindsight, I know it was insane. And we absolutely failed to capitalize on it because we weren't mature enough.
Interesting. So did the hair loss actually make you look or seem more mature when you spoke to people?
I'm hoping so.
Oh, I was talking about me. Well, it's interesting. So how many years have you been on your own?
So when I started up, then I was moonlighting. So I was still working at the time. Now I've been out on my own for, I think, 5 years now, this year.
And given a choice, what would you do different if you had to?
You're saying if I was doing it over again?
Yep.
I think I would be much more pragmatic. I think a lot of my decisions are, were and still are driven by a certain ideal. But I've learned to respect the fact that achieving an ideal does not happen overnight. And I think one consistent pattern that I see when I look back at what I did was this consistent undercurrent of impatience, which led to sort of tactical decision making, which in turn led to bad decisions. So I would definitely sort of caution myself to not be impatient. And of course, what I said earlier, be very clear about what you're trying to achieve with something, you know?
Interesting. So, what advice would you have for any budding Mark Zuckerbergs here who are going to be the next, the next big names that people will remember at a very young age? Anyone in the crowd? Because then he's probably the man who could probably give some advice to anyone who really wants, who's young, wants to start up, doesn't know if he or she should. Any advice for them?
There's a lot, of course. I think there's a long list of mistakes I've made. I can't tell people what they should do. I can certainly tell them what they shouldn't do, at least of the things I haven't done. But I think the one key thing that stands out for me was, this was a piece of advice I was given, which is that early on in your career, you are investing in building a foundation that helps you scale what you're doing later. Now, you can either be very tactical about it and say, look, I'm in a hurry, I want to make more money, or I want a big brand, or so on and so forth. Or you can say, look, I'm 20-something now, when I'm 30-something, I need to have these skills in place and invest in building those skills now. Or to put it another way, at the earliest phases, focus on whom you're going to learn from and what it is you want to learn, and everything else is secondary to this. The money, the brand, all of these things are secondary. Because the way this piece of advice was rounded off for me was, remember this, at the age of 20, what you will make in a year, you will make in a week at the age of 40 if you're doing this right. So don't be tactical about things like money or brand. Be strategic, think long term, focus in improving the foundation you have, depending on what you want to do. If you want to start up, maybe study business, practice, become a great engineer. Definitely invest in mastering at least one skill, like either become a great engineer or a great salesperson or a great marketing person, whatever it is, but at least one foundational skill. And think long term, don't think tactically.
All right, and every time you fall down, get up again and keep running.
Absolutely.
Cool. You can make a song on that. Sharing is caring.
The Hyatt Hotel can only afford 2 handheld microphones.
All right, let's skip the sarcasm.
Why do you pass the microphone to me?
All right, Sidhu, it was a pleasure having you here. Really good. Thanks a lot for coming down. I have a long list of people, so thanks a lot. Questions would be welcome. I don't like to see these 3 seats vacant. Unless you're lazy enough to raise your hand, please occupy these seats. Well, next up, we have Mr. Amit Sharma. There he is. He's the CTO of Zoomcar. And he comes in with an interesting, different background. Like Sidhu was like starting up young. He's been moving. He's moved from a startup to a large funded company, Zoomcar. And let's have a quick chat with him. Welcome to the stage.
Hi.
So it'll help if you tell us, when did you start and a little background about yourself.
Yeah, so I am primarily a double E guy, so I passed out in 2005. Then I was doing my job in Gurgaon. We came up with the idea of solving local search. So around 2006, 2007, there was no as such information available. Just Dial is primarily on phone and all. So we started our venture, khojguru.com, from a flat in 2006. And that's where we started up, actually. But I committed full-time in 2008 into that venture. And the first problem we have at the time is to solve the technology. I took it up and learned everything from ground up.
Interesting. So if you had, when you start up, what is the quick fire advice you would want to give people to, to ensure that you at least have some semblance of success?
Okay. Yeah, so there are two things I would say that it will help you in a lot if you start as a foundation in your startup. Is first is be frugal. So whatever you do, even if you are building anything, just strip out whatever you can. Think of the whole thing as an MVP and then start building that. So you may be thinking that let's go out and to the user with some sort of a polished product, but I would say that save time, bring that whatever bare thread product you have to the user, and then see how they are interacting, because what you may be building is something very different which user may be wanting. So you just validate the first fact and then go about executing and taking the user feedback and iterate quickly, very quickly over your product and make them out to the end user. The second will be invest big time in your team. So whatever people you are hiring when you are very, very small, put right kind of hooks and right kind of people should be there so that you can scale fast, you can build product effectively, and you can have that hockey stick curve whenever you can hit that. So that is one thing which really happened in Zoom as well. So we invested in people even before when we need them, and just because they are smart enough to actually jump on things and solve problem which iterate over time, and we were able to build a much better product than what we have.
So it's interesting. So you're looking for more of the business side. So let's see. Nick here is a committer of a lot of open source tools, and you are more the business sense. So like I'd love Nick to ask you questions about Trailblazer and Cells.
Okay.
But I think you will delegate. What would you want people who are programmers? I mean, a lot of us are programmers here. Like Nick, he's been doing this stuff for so long.
Yeah.
Can you convert any open source stuff into a business?
Sorry.
Into a business?
Yeah, you can actually. That.
There you go.
So I mean, to give you, I mean, whatever we are doing in Zoom is open source. The fundamental things is open source. We are building business logic on top of it, translate into a business sense and get users on board. I think, I mean, fundamentally, I would always be using open source till someone comes to my, put a trigger on my head that, okay, use this technology. I think what kind of problem you are solving will define whether you can actually make money out of it or not. It's as simple as that. Open source is one way. You can go out with any of the paid solution as well. But if the problem you are solving is genuine enough and is big enough to make a significant difference in the life of the people, then definitely you will make money.
Awesome. It was like a lot of advice given here. I hope that helps some people who are venturing into this. Thank you so much, Amit, for being
Thanks
here.
a lot for having me here. Thank you.
Well, let's switch a little bit of gears here. We've been talking about Ruby. What about what's next, Satish? What's next?
I've shifted from Ruby to Go about 2.5 years back. Basically, I like Go because I've come from C, C++ background. A lot of programs or products which I've built in the past were in that language, and Go is very much similar. But I would say all the drawbacks of C, C++ have been removed in that. And it's not only that. Now the newest version of Go has, you can build apps on Android, iOS, and Google is investing a lot of money in that because for obvious reasons. I think everyone knows about Google and Oracle legal problems. So that's one major reason, and it's a big market. India, China, where, in fact, outside US, the largest users of Go is in China. They have a huge market there. China, yes.
So in our spare time and over a few drinks, we'll probably get Nick to convert to Go.
Yeah.
Well, with that, let's get our next guest, Ajay Gore. I don't see you here. Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. I was searching for you. So Ajay comes with another. Oh, so I'm sorry. We have a question. guys, protocol. Queue. It's a queue. First come, first serve basis. You start in the middle. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, Satish, this question is for you. You just mentioned that Google is investing big time in Go because you also mentioned that you could develop for iOS, Android. But already people are developing applications using just the known technologies like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and deploying straight to these apps. So in this changed kind of environment, do you still think that Go will go that far?
I'm not from the Android and all background. I'm not from that, but I believe a lot of apps use Java. Am I right? I mean, anyone from that area? Android? Yeah.
Android developers.
So am I right in saying a lot of? Yeah, yeah. So the idea is because of this Java problem which Google has, there are a lot of, they want to move away from that. That's the basic thing. And they've succeeded with the current version which was just released 2 days back. And they've already got some apps working on iOS and Android. And the next version, which will be in Feb, they will have full compatibility.
Thank you.
I think we can take those. Yeah, we can take one more question. If you have a question, come and have a seat.
Hello, Satish sir. My question is on similar lines. Hello, yeah. So you said about Go. So now we are actually using the Rails framework. Most of us are Rails developers. So like if we make a shift to Go, so any recommendations on any web application framework which Go supports, we should be?
Yeah, there are many frameworks which are available. There is Rebel, which is very much like Rails.
Okay.
But basically, Go, the standard Go library itself has the net HTTP package is so strong that for many cases you don't really require any framework.
But I've had that experience too.
Probably since this is a Ruby conference, it's better that after the we could talk about it in more detail.
Go packages are actually pretty strong where you can just use the basic stuff. It's more of a language to just do it yourself rather than rely on somebody else. So you should give it a shot unless you really, really need to look for some other packages for web development.
Right. Thanks a lot, sir.
And before we take the next question, so Ajay here is he's a founder of Code Ignition, but he comes again with a different startup theme. Starting up late. We've already seen somebody who started up really early in life. We've seen Amit who's been there, done that, gone to other startups. Ajay started up late. He was the head of technology at ThoughtWorks.
No, actually,
and he was the ex-CTO of Hopper.
Yeah, 1 minute. So we had this joke in ThoughtWorks. So everybody call the reception, it's HotWorks. No, it's not HotWorks, it's ThoughtWorks. And we'll explain 5 times, and they always thought we are something else. And I don't want to go there, but yeah, it was like that.
Well, he's just made me feel good because being called from HotWorks is much better than being called from who's Josh.
That's true.
I can easily break the ice, but dude, it just melts for you. HotWorks. And he's also the ex-CTO of Hopper, which is now Hike. And Ajay, you started up really late, at the age of what, 75?
No.
We'll let the old man settle down. Old man, settle down. So you started up late in life. What are the risks? What are the risks like starting up late and 37?
Nailed it, right? Okay. So when you start up at say 25 or 30 or 37, I think all of them are same. Risks change, and then it depends on you how you mitigate them. And there are a lot of things which you do which nobody values. And it is always true, and you don't have to worry about those. What major risk which I had was to have the same continued support for family, same continued education and lifestyle for my kids, and same continued financial stream at least for next 1 year.
So you mean you were still visiting the same high-end pubs that you used to when you were working?
Yeah, because if you are trying to, one more thing, which is like, if you are trying to do startup and you just go from like middle-aged pub to like low-age pub, it doesn't make a difference. What you actually end up doing is you don't go to pub. So you drink the same scotch, but you drink it at home with friends. It's more fun.
So what's important is what goes in, not where.
Exactly, yeah, of course.
No pun intended at all. But so when that doesn't happen too often. This only happens when Ajay is on stage. But you know, there are times in life when you have a family, you had kids when you started up. It doesn't matter. So it actually is, by saying you had kids, it's more about the risk. I mean, Nick's laughing, man. When he started up.
No, I had kids, but they are still exist, okay? They do exist.
So providing for them, ensuring, when you decided to start up, how much was the decision yours versus of a collective decision?
Actually, it was collective decision. So my wife is also co-founder, but I'm not a founder of Codignition. I have 4 more co-founders, and it's very interesting. The way Codignition started was more around. So people say when you start a startup, you need to find common themes, and people usually go and find common themes around financial background, or same kind of education, same kind of age group. Me and my co-founders don't have these 3 things in common. My 2 co-founders are very young, they're 22. My 1 co-founder is 30. My wife, I won't tell her age, but...
Thank you.
Yeah. And I am pretty old. But what we found common was the passion and to do something. And everybody has this, if you look at Army, the way Army executes, they have something called commander's intent, like what you want to get done. And we had that in common. Everybody understood what we want to do. And we iterated over a period of 2 years now. We started as a product plus consulting company. We did product, we did consulting, and now we are a consulting company. One thing which we did not change is whether it is product or consulting, we dealt both of them or treated both of them as product only. So right now we are building a brand called Codignition, which is a product. While we are a consulting company, but we are building a brand Codignition and do everything behind the scene.
So did you ever feel, and this question is out for you, Satish, among your startups, did you ever feel that, damn it, I shouldn't have done this? Ever felt that, did I take the wrong decision?
See, when things go right, you never feel these things. But there will be always times, like I don't know whether people will accept it or not, but once in 6 months you will feel that. But then I always say, this is not permanent. And nothing is permanent. So if this phase is not permanent, so something better is going to come. So it happens. Yeah, I do feel, but yeah, once in 6 months.
All right, and any advice for 2 people about the right age to start up? Not in terms of numbers, but in terms of time, of how long you've dealt in the industry. It was a serious question.
There is no right age for a startup. There is right set of people around you for the startup. So if you are building the products, you need to have right set of customers in front of you. If you are building services, you should have right set of clients or somebody who purchases your services. If you are building something else, B2B, you should have right set of businesses. So it does matter. A lot of startups do not do well. The reason is not technology. Reason is not the people. Reason is that how do they go out and reach people? So when I did, actually, you're my friends, and I'll talk. We know this anyway.
We're friends, but we're on stage.
Yeah. So when we started, one of the things which I had was I had a very good support from people who were my friends, and I knew what I'm building out. So I reached out to them, got their advice, talked to them over and over and over. So don't try to hide your idea. Go talk to as many people as you can. People will encourage you, right set of people. Community is all there. So that is first thing. Second thing which I always believe is in the job, I don't know, I always go to job and I'm ready to get fired every day. So go to job as if you will get fired every day. That means you put everything on a stake. And once you put everything on a stake, things do work well. It's like that is second advice. And third advice is start learning spreadsheets.
Start learning spreadsheets.
Yeah, whether you are doing product, whether you are services, you have to have your 3 months annual operating plan or a quarterly operating plan. You should know from where your money will come, at what time you're going to hire somebody, or what time you're going to hit client, or what time you shouldn't be emotional about shutting down something, what time you shouldn't be emotional about firing somebody, what time you shouldn't be emotional about hiring somebody. So do that. Be on your spreadsheet. We review our spreadsheet every month, and we know what we're going to do in next 6 months. We don't know what we're going to do in next 2 years, but at least we know tactically what we're going to do in next 6 months in terms of revenue and all stuff. And we know strategically what we're going to do in next 2-3 years in terms of product vision and consulting vision.
Interesting. Thank you so much for that advice. Thanks a lot, Ajay. So we've gone through your question was for. All right, go for it.
You have said that the Go language is the next language. So I would like to know what are the factors which you consider while you decide upon which is the next big thing, which is the next language. Because in the context of the talk we're having here, startups, we must be pragmatic. That is the undercurrent common between all. So between the idealism of something new and something better and the pragmatism of what is required to get the job done, how do you decide on what is the next technology or the language?
There are many factors, and probably the right place is after this. We can sit and discuss this. But I've experimented with many other languages in between, like Clojure, Scala. Point is, I feel there should be some major company backing if it's going to be adopted in the corporates. So, like when Java came in 95, 94. Nobody knew about Java. The only thing they knew was a motorbike called Java. I don't know whether you know that. JAWA. That's all what people had heard. Subsequently, it got adopted because Sun's backing was there. Sun made a lot of contribution in terms of training, in terms of actually meeting corporates. Since I was involved then, Ruby unluckily doesn't have any such major company backing. But it was I think that stage where a lot of startups started in India. It was around that same time when Ruby came in, and what probably 8-10 people, Java people could do, 2-3 guys in Ruby could do the same thing at much lesser cost. So startups, that was ideal. Go, though it started off in Google, it's now open source, but Google, lot of backing is there, which is very important for adoption, unlike many other languages which may be better.
Nice. I hope that answers your question. All right, is Siddhant in the crowd? Siddhant Chote? Yeah. Can Siddhant come on upstage? And in the meantime, I'd also like to call upon his SVS here. All right, man, come on over. So these are two different breeds of startups. We've seen people who started up young. We've seen people who've gone there, started up, got into larger companies. We've seen people who started up late. Come on. You got a chair right in front of you here? All right, cool. Have a seat. We have Siddhant on my right, who is the co-founder of TechVision. You got a mic in your hand? There you go. So he's you already had a couple of your employees coming in here. And on my left here is my friend Siddharth. We'll talk to both of you all shortly too. But Siddharth, tell us about TechVision. And just for your information, Siddharth's visually impaired.
So basically we started TechVision under the umbrella of an NGO named Nivant Andha Mukta Vikasalaya. The NGO's goal has been basically to impart education after school, which was not there in the city and around the city for visually impaired students. And somewhere because it supported the further higher education for students, we got into IT. There were guys with me like Sangpal, Nitin initially. They even got into IT, and finally we had a project incoming from a US-based firm named Boardwalk Tech. And back then, while getting a job, it was quite tough convincing employers about our abilities. So just getting into the mainstream meant that not only that we knew programming, but that we had to prove that we knew computers. So we even started to look for BPO or data entry jobs. At such juncture, when we got a project, we were like excited and then thought, let's just give all that up and get together and start it. So since then, we have been working on Java and stuff. But later on in 2012, even Josh Software, Gautam sir himself had landed up in the same NGO. And then we got into Ruby. And also, our dream ever since has been to also get into accessibility, because that can be a niche for many people who are getting trained in computers out there, and that can be a white collar job for them, is what we thought back then. And that is why we even started Insight Academy and things like that, which impart computer training to students. Now coming back to
So quick question for you here. I'm sorry to interrupt you in that one, but I stopped you at a pertinent point. Did you ever feel left behind, left out, just because you want your dream of a company you're taking all the visually impaired guys, you're training them, you're teaching them, you're getting them help. Do you ever feel that people take advantage of you?
What sort of advantage can...
That you're saying, you know what, maybe, oh, well, I'm going to actually get your work and they get work done for you cheaper, or they're not giving you a full value or extracting a lot more work from you. Do you see any sort of discrimination ever at all? I know it's a very serious and it's a very wrong question to ask, but I want to.
This is something that I would want to evaluate, frankly. But because we've got very few work areas as of now, there has to be some comparison factors wherein we would really have more clients giving us work, and then we can just say that, yeah, I think this guy is giving us lesser amount. For now, it has been like the funding that we have been getting from Josh Software for our open source projects and the US-based client that has been paying us. And that is what is at least running the show for now and keeping us motivated to get more people. Because we operate from the same premises, I'll certainly say that it inspires others to get into the same stream. We've got more students who are getting into the computer stream, which wasn't the case a few years ago. So.
Very interesting, and it was a really nice talk that was given earlier by Sangpal and Shantanu. So that was really cool. So I'll take the mic from you and switch it on to Sid. You can be seated. Yeah. So Siddharth, oh you're already mic'd up. So
is this working?
Yeah, I think so. So Siddharth, I don't even know how to introduce you. You've been working in so many different things at the same time, and being a hardcore techie, you also had a lot of business sense. So you come in a different realm here too, that you've had a technical hat for a lot of times, you have a business hat. I believe you got funded and you owe me a party, or us a party, or something like that. Tell us more about it, man.
So I'm actually a BCom. I think I'm the only MBA here who regularly pushes code into production, though my CTO doesn't let me do that anymore. Sorry?
Just use that.
Yes. Yeah. So, you don't really want to know the story of my life, right?
Nope, only the interesting parts, or the parts where you fell off your bus.
Cool. So we recently started up mass transit company. We figured that public transport or mass transit can be much, much nicer than it actually is right now. And that currently technology is at a point where you can build an amazing mass transit network without inventing anything new. So we're doing that. We're called RBus. We're live in Bombay right now. So if any one of you wants to work on mass transit and mobility, find me after.
Interesting. And you've done different startups at various stages. how has that experience been for you? If you're given a choice, would you work in a startup, in a funded startup, in a large company, corporate C world? What's your advice for everyone here?
So I think nothing actually teaches you more than actually doing a startup. This kind of experience is extremely important. The things that it teaches you to value and what things are important and what things are not important. I think this experience will stand you in good stead whatever you tend to do. Personally, I couldn't imagine not working in a startup, and the only big corporation I hope to work in is Airbus a few years later.
Perfect. So the panel is actually right now full of 5 people here. How important do all of you all actually think that it is important to represent yourself on stage by talking at conferences or organizing meetups or organizing conferences and being a part of the community? I'm probably going to push this question to all of you all, but I'd love to go. Since you have the mic, why don't you start?
So I think the two are distinct. I think being a good member of the community is something that comes from within. If you're fake about it, everyone will be able to see through it regardless. So that's never a good idea. Being a good member of the community because you like the community, because you like what the community stands for and what it does, what it talks about when it gets together, that's the only reason to participate in the community. If you are doing it out of a cynical motive for, I don't know, PR or press, that usually doesn't go very far eventually.
Interesting. Satish, Nick, thoughts on involvement in the community by setting up meetups or organizing conferences or
speaking at conferences,
Speaking
because
at
I don't set up
conferences.
conferences, too much work. So because I always encourage young people like you guys to speak at conferences, because it's actually really simple. You just talk about things you're interested in, and if you structure it right and simple, people are going to understand it. And you go to a conference, you meet hundreds of cool people, you get new networking contacts, it's just great if you like hear people clapping and you're like, oh cool, they clap because I told them something they like. And it's not that hard, and the benefits of a conference, even if you have to spend money on it, because I mean when you start speaking you don't get paid instantly, you don't get your tickets paid, but it's worth for me, every euro, dollar, whatever I've spent was worth the way, because it's like there's friendships and there's new jobs and new turns in my life that all happen basically at conferences. And so if you don't be like I mean I can only talk about conferences. I haven't done a startup. I haven't set up a meetup, but yeah. I mean, we have hundreds of, or not hundreds, but dozens of conferences in the world where, within reach. So if there is a call for proposal, just send in something you want to talk about, and you are not going to regret it. Because the community, the Ruby community is open, is great. You give a talk, and it's more like you chat to your friends. So if you feel like talking, just do it, even if you're scared. And if you have questions, you can always ask on Twitter or something, and people will answer you. So take the chance and speak at conferences.
Satish?
Two things. One is make use of this conference you always get to know something new. And next is networking. Very important. Meet people, whoever are there, just don't sit in a corner. That's what I get out of this.
Nice. So organizing conferences is fun. While Siddhant, you have
there's also always free beers at every conference.
While Siddhant, you've spoken at RailsConf last year. What was the experience like?
At the RailsConf, it was quite a unique experience, because there we got to learn a lot. Frankly, because the kind of inquisitive way people look at a presentation, coming from the Indian academics, the way we have been brought up was a completely different mindset. It's like whatever is being taught is the ultimate thing. And going at RailsConf, that was the first thing that really struck. Second thing was the quality of talks, which was I remember a talk by Jess Eldridge that was about taking notes, and it was she used to like was talking about the graphic notes. That was something new, and the receptivity of people towards ideas. We met a few Rails core members like Guillermo and Aaron and others, and the kind of openness they showed towards the idea of viable when we proposed it out there, which is what inspired, and finally we came back to really give it a go and get it working to its today's.
Absolutely. So how many of you all have actually met Aaron Patterson? If you really want to meet him, submit to some conference somewhere, go meet him, go meet your heroes. And by Aaron Patterson is just a name there, but there are plenty of people there who are actually helping out, doing open source stuff. So Siddhant, thanks for being on stage. Sid, may I request you to just help Siddhant to his place. And so we have one more different kind of entrepreneur who's going to be the last guest here, after which we will all go for the party and beers and stuff like that. But Aditya. So Aditya is also one of the organizers of the conference. And he is an interesting breed in himself. He was an ex-co-founder of a startup. He was a CTO of a company. And today, he's a developer and a software engineer. So he's gone back into development, Aditya. Most of the people who come here talk about how they started up, when they started up, how to start up, right? Let's hear the dark side of it. You've gone from starting up and come back like, hey man, I just want to be a software developer.
Hello? Yeah. So I wouldn't call it really a dark side. I just realized it's not for me. Right? So I mean, different people like different things, and there was a point where I would say cracked a lot of technical challenges, and I was interested in the challenge of how to convert your technical effort into money, which was my motivation for doing the startup. And I totally relate to what Sidhu said, in the sense that I wasn't mature enough. I made some really bad mistakes in execution. But I think of it like a 4-year MBA without a degree. And so I really learned a lot. And I think the biggest thing I learned through the process was that I understood how creation is converted to money, the gap, the sales, the marketing side of it. But I also realized that I'm not really interested in it.
So when you say you're not interested in it, does it mean like, how many of you all feel here that, hey man, one day I'm going to start up? How many want to start up? And people who haven't started up already, right? If you haven't started up but you dream, I want to start up. Here is one person who's giving exactly the opposite advice. And I found it pretty interesting that we should have him here on stage to tell you that just because you have started up is not the end of the world. Doesn't mean that, hey man, you've made it big. It's the journey there. I mean, I remember talking to you earlier, you were telling me about your startup where you had a client visit and everything was in your head, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the cleaning lady had not showed up and I ended up cleaning the toilets. But you have to be prepared to do that if you're starting up. So like people see the glamour side of it. People see the apparent respect that they get from their peers. But it's also a lot of hard work.
It's a lot of hard work. So here, ladies and gentlemen, is an interesting line of thought. Just because you are an entrepreneur doesn't mean that, you know what, you made it. And just because you're a software developer doesn't mean that you have to strive to be a startup. I think you were using words like just be passionate about what you are. If you like to code, just code. If you want to do accounting and you don't enjoy it, don't code. I mean, code, but don't do the accounting. Either get somebody to do it or do what you do best. And so what kind of lessons have you learned, or what advice would you give people who are, how many of you are not sure? I don't know, maybe I should start up, not start up. You don't even raise your hand now, okay? Because this thought is not something that if you raise your hand, you're sure whether you want to, you don't want to. But it's a thought which floats. Do I have it in me to start up? Any advice that you try to find out whether it is in you or not?
So there are two things, right? One is you really don't know till you take the plunge. There's no way of knowing whether you will be successful or whether you'll be able to do a startup till you actually commit full time to it. Unfortunately, there's no way, and you have to take the risk.
So there are no signs.
No, yeah, you just have to do it. Right?
What do you think, Satish? Where is the other mic?
If you feel like starting up something, I think you should just do it. There's very difficult to really judge, or there are no ballpark figures or anything. Just do it. That's what I think. And that's what I feel.
Yeah, well, so that's, yeah, please go ahead.
The second point is a lot of people ask for advice on how they should approach the startup. The thing is, the ecosystem and like the entire landscape is so varied that there's a very little chance that somebody else's advice is going to actually completely apply to you. There's just one common current that I found that applies to everyone, and that is just act on your gut feeling.
Interesting.
I mean, everything else is variable. I think that one point stays throughout.
Nice. That's an interesting thought. Now, we are almost concluding our panel here. But feel free to catch anyone you saw on stage, or anyone who you feel you can either help, give advice, or take advice, because all of us are going to be at the party, which is going to start soon. So Satish, in conclusion, I mean, we have a mix of the old and the mix of the new and the young people here, right? Well, we are organizers. So you've seen COBOL, C, Java, Ruby in their infancy, and going ahead, you're looking into Go. What keeps you going and keeps going continuously? What keeps you making the change? What keeps you going?
Why do you keep saying go all the time? Is that like subliminal messages?
Exactly.
Where are we going?
Psychosis.
I'll just say cheers.
Oh. All right, so he says cheers. Well, and the bar is open. Well, all right. Thank you so much for being on the panel. Thank you for being a good audience. Thank you. Video.